Welcome to the Custom House Maritime Museum's exhibition of 18th to 19th century legendary Newburyporters. I am Jeff Briggs, the sculptor and inspirer of this exhibition. Because of time and space, the exhibition was limited to 14 sculptures. It is only a small fraction of Newburyport's historic treasure trove of former citizens whose achievements have advanced mankind in all ways imaginable. I began 4 years ago sculpting famous Newburyporters, not knowing it would blossom into what you see today. The show and its book is the work of over 30 co-creators. Amateur and professional historians aided me in the creation of the sculptures and produced all of the writing that you will see. The primary intention of the show, to the history surrounding each figure, is to introduce the visitor. The purpose of the sculpture is to arouse your interest in reading the informational panels and the accompanying book. In his 20s, Nathaniel Tracy and his brother assumed the wealth of the family business of merchant shipping. They were avid supporters of the Patriot cause. Nathaniel and his partners launched their first privateers in support of the Revolution. Privateers were authorized by the colonial government to attack foreign ships and to take them for prizes. This activity was extremely profitable. The supplies and the ammunition taken from these ships were essential in the success against the British. Nathaniel sent out 24 privateering cruisers that captured 120 vessels between 1775 and 1783. He loaned money and provided supplies to the revolutionary government. Accounts tell of him being tall and robust, constantly entertaining guests in his homes. I imagine him stepping out of his State Street mansion on an afternoon walk, dressed in the latest fashions of the day. Tristram Dalton was a compatriot of Tracy and also an avid supporter of the American Revolution. At 32, Dalton inherited his father's wealthy shipping business. With his ships, he aided the war effort by running supplies and equipping 9 privateers. He became the chair of the local Committee for the Safety and Correspondence, which was the colonial government during the Revolution. After the war, he was a delegate to the convention to ratify the federal constitution and the first senator from Massachusetts. The portrait of Dalton appears to be painted when he was in his 40s. Sculptural adaptation of the portrait is complete with the customary breeches, linen stockings, and custom-made shoes. He lost his shipping interest during and after the war. He died in 1817. I wanted to create an image of him that conveyed his dominance in the elite merchant aristocracy. The Revolutionary War financially ruined some of William Bartlett's fellow shipping merchants, although he participated in the privateering ventures like the others and the post-war depression. By the 1790s, Bartlett was the wealthiest man in Newburyport. Even though the Newburyport maritime industry never fully recovered from the depression that followed, William diversified his business into manufacturing and continued to expand. Bartlett's fleet resumed trading between 1816 and 1839, taking advantage of the lucrative China trade. William Bartlett refused to set for a portrait. The drawing here is the only known image of him. Historians describe him as a commanding person. His trading activity with China is symbolized in the sculpture by the Oriental side stand. His business skills are represented by the large ledger in his lap. Calvinism was an essential feature of his life, symbolized here by his religious chair, decorated with Calvinist symbols. The outbreak of the American Revolution took place after Reverend George Whitefield had passed from the scene, but the fires of revolution were set by powerful orators like Whitefield. Rejected by traditional church leaders of his day, George Whitefield was forced to go out in the fields and preached to the masses. He is called the first true American evangelist. Whitefield is considered the spearhead of the Great Awakening that gave rise to the American Revolution. He is often called the forgotten founding father of America for promoting religious and political liberty and the ideas of a republic. The 1769 portrait of Reverend Whitefield is the iconic image of him. I felt it was imperative that my sculpture should be a version of this image. Once I had completed the total figure, I found it necessary to add the rostrum in front of him to convey the religious aspects of the sculpture. While some were sparking the revolution, others were being driven into financial ruin. Timothy Dexter was investing in it. In 1793, Dexter ranked fourth in wealth behind William Bartlett. The foundations of his wealth were investments he made in continental money, which remained worthless until the federal banking program was established. Dexter put the investment profits into vessels and stock. He proclaimed himself Lord Timothy Dexter. His acquired wealth increased his desire for respectability amongst his peers. This manifested itself in strange behavior. Historic images show him parading around town in an outlandish wardrobe. He wore a tremendous tricornered hat, adorned with tassels, shoes tipped with silver bells, accompanied by a hairless black dog. I thought it was impossible to portray Dexter in any other way. Parsons was one of those so badly needed leaders, able to establish a principled government after the Revolution. As a young lawyer in 1778, a convention was held to draft a state constitution. Parsons disliked the document that they had drafted. He published a critical pamphlet called the Essex Resolve. He criticized the draft for not having a Declaration of Rights and for not condemning slavery. He recommended that the new government should have three bodies: executive, legislative, and judicial. Writing government constitutions was a new and difficult concept. It took until 1781 for Massachusetts to ratify its constitution. All of Parsons' recommendations became part of it. The Massachusetts Constitution became the template for the U.S. Constitution a few years later. He served in the Massachusetts legislature and became a Massachusetts Supreme Court justice. I chose a dominant hand gesture that orators use to express their arguments in this sculpture. From Newburyport's perspective, the Revolutionary War was a battle at sea. Naval conflicts continued long after the U.S. was established, requiring men of bravery and skill. Captain Moses Brown commanded 5 Briggs and 3 of Tracy's privateers during the war. The Continental Navy decommissioned its vessels after the Revolution. This left the American merchant fleet vulnerable to French pirates in the Caribbean and elsewhere. Newburyport merchants suffered the loss of 78 vessels. Outraged, they built and equipped a 24-gun sloop of war, the Merrimac, for the Navy. They named the battle-experienced Captain Moses Brown as its commander. The Merrimac joined the USS Constitution and protected merchant vessels in the Caribbean. Historians describe Brown as 6 foot tall, muscular with broad shoulders. This portrait was most useful in making this sculpture. He shaved his face smooth and wore a wig. For the sculpture, I dressed him in a naval captain's uniform of 1790s and completed the design with symbols of command, a telescope, and cutlass. Moving of goods and commerce in the newly formed America was inconvenient at best. Crossing rivers and streams were a major obstacle in the newly united colonies. In 1791, local merchants requested proposals to build a bridge across the Merrimac. in the present-day location of the chain bridge. Timothy Palmer, a local housewright who had never built a bridge, conceived an ingenious concept to use highly cambered, open truss construction to span an open distance. The bridge, spanning 160 feet over water, opened in 1792. Palmer's Bridge was the first long-span truss bridge in the country. I decided that Palmer's sculpture should incorporate a model of the bridge. There are no surviving drawings of it. There is only one existing image of the original bridge in a painting. With the help of members from the National Society for the Preservation of Covered Bridges, descriptions and dimensions of the bridge were acquired. With these, I was able to make a reduced model of the bridge, which you see in the sculpture. An excellent portrait of Palmer exists about the age that he constructed the bridge. I decided to dress him in simple clothing, reflecting his working-class status at the very beginning of his career. From its early beginnings, Newburyport was a maritime powerhouse. Ships built here traveled the entire world. It is understandable that the acquired knowledge of the world navigation would have been concentrated here. Edmund March Blunt published the first books providing navigational aids to U.S. ports in 1796. In the age of sail, such information was indispensable. He and his sons continued to publish the Coastal Pilot until 1872, then sold it to the government. Today, NOAA, the federal agency, publishes such works. Interpreting Blunt as simply a publisher was not enough. His business in the beginning also sold all types of navigational equipment. Along with maps, he supplied captains with compasses, sextants, and aids to navigation. The decision was made to show him setting type, surrounded by other navigational equipment that he marketed. The new nation established the currency system in 1792. Rampant counterfeit currency became a major problem. Jacob Perkins, already a renowned inventor, had created several manufacturing processes. He turned his attention to counterfeit currency prevention by improving the printing engraving process. The stereotype plate he invented was composed of 64 interlocking discs that eliminated counterfeiting. By the end of the first decade of the 1800s, Perkins' invention became the required process for printing all money. Perkins' invention of the stereotype plate remained in use into the 20th century. I decided the best way to portray Perkins was as a working inventor in his early years. I discovered one image of the transfer press, the central part in his new printing process. I decided to show Perkins working behind the press. From the drawing of the press and information supplied by historians, I constructed the model press you see in the sculpture. Newburyport maritime heritage continued well into the 19th century. Thousands of ships of all types were built on the shores of the Merrimack. Donald Mackay worked in Newburyport shipyards constructing 7 vessels between 1839 and 1845. These were formative years for his later success as a premier architect and builder of the fastest sailing vessels ever built, the most famous of which is the Flying Cloud. While researching Mackay, I read a description of his advanced clipper ship innovations. I recognized his ability to envision how a new hull design would maximize speed. I used similar abilities to imagine three-dimensional sculpture before it is created. McKay inspecting dimensions of a ship model seemed a logical design for the sculpture. The 19th century saw the expansion of the United States as a world power. Leaders of versatile ability were dearly needed in this expanding world stage. Lawyer, diplomat, legislator, jurist, politician, author in general don't adequately describe the extensive career of Caleb Cushing. Between 1821 and 1877, Cushing served in the government. He served in the U.S. House of Representatives for 4 terms, appointed ambassador to China in 1843, and negotiated the first U.S. favorable treaty, raised a regiment to fight in the Mexican-American War, first mayor of newly incorporated city of Newburyport, appointed Associate Justice to the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, U.S. Attorney General between 1853 and 1857, negotiated the rights to build the Panama Canal. I felt portraying him in judicial robes would give him the status he deserves. The symbolism of the world globe in the sculpture represents Cushing's accomplishments on the world stage. There is a scarcity of 19th century history of women in America. However, one stands out in the history of Newburyport. In 1883, Anna Jakes, then 83 years old, unmarried woman, donated $25,000 to establish the first hospital in Newburyport. Her multiple generational Newburyport farm family had accumulated a fortune in investments. Anna became the last remaining family member. In her remaining years, she gave her inheritance to multiple charitable societies. She gave $25,000 in bonds, today worth $685,000, in trust, to establish and maintain a hospital for the Newburyport area. Today, Anna Jakes Hospital is a premier regional hospital. The challenge was to create a sculpture of Anna Jakes from a single upper torso photo of her. Determining her dress style, hairpiece, and jewelry from the fuzzy photo seemed impossible. Only with the help of clothing historians was I able to create her sculpture. There was space for only one more sculpture in the show. The exhibition committee wanted to represent more women in the show. Another dilemma was added to the exhibition. There was no enslaved person represented. We reached a solution. The sculpture would feature generic women in 3 classes: the elite merchant class, an enslaved woman, and a rural working class woman. Suddenly I had 4 sculptures to do. I needed help with all the research. We recruited a team of historic experts in women's studies, headed by Bethany Groff DeRoe. She told us that we needed historical precedents for the group sculpture. We discovered that in 1771, Tristram Dalton's family had 3 enslaved servants. The composition of the sculpture is made up of an enslaved woman, Ruth Dalton, the elite merchant class wife of Tristram Dalton, and their son Robert, and an unidentified working class woman. We hope you have enjoyed this brief overview of the show and will be able to come and immerse yourself in it more thoroughly.